slate, just a heads up, it is a 6:40 p.m. Eastern start. For those of you guys who didn't know, we'll still planning to go live at 6, but shouldn't take.
Yeah, that sounds good. We can still do that 6 o'clock. That works.
Great. But yeah, it's another one of the not quite sure what I want to do at pitching slate, so we'll get into it. We'll go game by game. Sheets, any overall thoughts before we get into game by game?
Yeah, let me go over a couple of things first. This coming weekend is the Belmont Stakes. Ironically, it's being held at Saratoga for the first time ever because Belmont itself is under construction. So in any case, I'm going to be doing a breakdown of that. I'm also going to be going on someone else's this MMA guy show. He does all kinds of sports. I'm going to go on as a guest and talk about the Belmont there as well. As far as this past weekend goes, I almost made money in golf. That's like a big deal to almost make money in golf. I cashed in like 2 of the bigger buy-ins with 5 of 6s. That was my big success. So almost winning in golf. So we'll try to improve on that.
Nice.
Baseball wise today, again, it's 6:40 slate. So make sure you're on top of that. My initial take is that, based on my initial projections, it's probably a good MME slate only because, once again, I don't really see that big of a standout as far as pitching goes. And when I look at the hitting, and we'll get to individuals, I see one team that obviously stands out. But aside from that, it's kind of a war. So we'll talk about them when we all get there.
That sounds good. All right, let's jump into it. Let's go into game by game. And
let me get my screen up, right?
We'll go, yeah. Just getting some things figured out here. And yeah, there we go.
Okay.
All right. So Philadelphia and Milwaukee. Go ahead, Sheets.
I guess I'll start. So right off the bat, not by an overwhelming majority, but right now I do have Zach Wheeler as the top overall pitcher on the slate. But as I mentioned, not by too much. Like I have 3 other guys that rate very similar to him. But certainly Zach Wheeler looks to be in good shape here. As far as Wilson goes, I'm not quite getting to him. As far as hitting, I imagine I'm not going to be getting Milwaukee. And on the Philadelphia side, I'm really not getting too much of Philly either. So for me, right now it's just Wheeler as kind of a standout, and that's pretty much it.
I think that I really love Philly, actually. I think that they're probably going to be what I end up doing today. So I like Wheeler a lot too. Okay. I don't think there's anything to like. Bryce Wilson is not a good pitcher. I have no issues with taking as many shots as I possibly can against him in general. Milwaukee has a above average bullpen for what it's worth, but it's Philly. The Phillies an elite offense, and I think in this matchup that they have to be right near the top for me at least. And they hit at home. It's 80 degrees in Philly. It's a good hitter's park. Everything leading me to want to play them, and they've got a couple cheap bats to go with the really expensive bats, but they are really expensive overall, which is going to be why they're not 20% owned as a stack, I think.
See, that was my problem. Like they rated high enough for me as far as points they're going to score. They were just so freaking expensive that I wasn't really quite getting to them. And like you said, there are pieces that you can use, but you do want to, try to have one of these 3 guys, if not 2 of them, right? Real Muto, Harper, and Schwarber, I suppose. So it is going to be tough to get them. But like you said, that's going to keep ownership down. So we'll see what happens.
Yep, and I think that for what it's worth, I think they're a little easier to get to on FanDuel. We'll talk more about FanDuel later, but and they're probably going to be more popular as a result. So, all right, the Mets and Washington.
Tell you, the Mets are coming off that just incredible DFS series with the Diamondbacks, where they just the team they just kept on just everybody crushed like every day.
Oh, every day, yeah.
Every day, both teams crushed in the new course, that being Citi Field, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what that was all about, but nonetheless, now you have so Mackenzie Gore on the Washington side. I have him as kind of the leader of the second tier. I don't have him, as part of the top 4, but I have him as like the next one. I don't think the ownership gap is going to be big enough for me to get down there, though. So we'll have to see. I do see the rain thing, just on the DraftKings things. I don't know if that's a big issue. McGill, I have him kind of like very much third tier, so I'm not really getting there. As far as the hitting goes, I think once again I'm kind of off of both these teams. So maybe Gore as GPP, maybe as a pivot, but that's pretty much all I have.
Yeah, I don't know. I think McGill is in play for me.
All right.
I mean, look, we need if there's a cheap guy to take a shot on, I think that I'll take a shot on a guy who just put up 30 against the Dodgers, against a Washington team that I don't mind picking on, and I know they don't strike out. They're about average, league average in strikeouts, and but they also don't score. So I think McGill is I'm considering him, and I think Mackenzie Gore is completely in play. For what it's worth, like Keibert Ruiz is still really cheap. I don't necessarily want to stack Washington in the lineups that I don't play McGill, but I think that Ruiz is really cheap, and Gallo, depending on where he hits, might be really cheap in there. So you might end up finding yourself with some mini Washington stacks, like where they do like a 3-man or something to save some money. So just something I thought I considered. But I have McGill and Gore as both totally playable, but I still have Wheeler as the top guy I'm using. All right, the Baltimore in Toronto pitchers duel. Ish.
I have the dual part, but not the ish part. Like I have Rodriguez kind of more second, third tierish. But then again, I mean, I will also have him at only 10, 12% owned. But I do have Gausman as one of the top options. 8K, perfectly reasonable. Baltimore's obviously a good offense, but, listen, you can't have everything. So I do like Gausman as one of my top 4. And I have Rodriguez really, really second tier. And as far as hitting goes, probably not getting to either.
Yeah, I'm deciding what I would want. I mean, you got it. Like the price on Gausman is tempting. Rodriguez has got upside. The problem is I have a hard time with the idea of like taking someone against Baltimore at high ownership. So I have to decide what I'm going to do with the Gausman thing, because that's the problem. Is I really do think a lot of these pitchers, like I sort of said it before, like I think that there's a lot of just similar type of plays. And Gausman, I do want to save money, and he's definitely got upside. But the problem is it's just a tough lineup to try to get through. I'm trying to look at it right now. Baltimore, in terms of strikeouts, yeah, they're one of the lowest strikeout teams against righties. They score a lot of runs. It's a tough matchup. But like we said, so Gausman, I'll probably end up with a lineup or two with him, and I probably will just end up just missing on Rodriguez. If the slate was a little bit like more desperate, I think that you could consider like a really contrarian Baltimore stack against Gausman. But I just don't think that we need to go there with where we're at. But I do think I don't know, maybe I'll consider that one actually a little bit, because I think that they're playable. All right, we can go over to Detroit and Texas.
Yep. So Detroit and Texas is a tough spot because Skubal I have him as one of the top 4 options, but it's definitely a scary spot, against Texas. But I think that's okay. Just because Texas can put up runs and hit the ball, I don't think that's a reason to get off of Skubal. I mean, he's got such good strikeout upside that I definitely consider him as one of the top 4. So definitely like Skubal. Eovaldi's a guy I always seem to want to play. I'm very not confused, but I figured his projection would be just a little bit better than what it is. So we'll have to see how that kind of works out. But if he's going to be really low owned for somehow, how is that possible against Detroit? I think
he only pitched one time after coming back from the injured list, and he only threw 3 innings.
Yeah,
I don't even know if he's going to throw I don't know how long he'll pitch.
Okay, well, so,
I don't know.
All right, well, fair enough then. I guess that's the reason. But
yeah, I think that's the reason.
But I mean, he's he's Eovaldi against Texas. I mean, he could if we're wrong and he does get a full workload. I mean, it's going to seem like a ridiculous price in the rearview mirror. So I'm going to keep an eye on this one. If I get to some of this by accident, I'm going to play it. As far as the hitting goes, I hate to say, I mean,
what it's worth, SaberSim has him projected at 66 pitches, so I think they are really factoring that in.
I guess so.
But the injury wasn't bad, so it was kind of weird because he only missed a couple starts in there. You know what I mean? It's only like, if you see the gap, it's only a couple weeks. Kind of strange that they would only let him throw 60 some odd pitches. So I'm confused at what to do with that one too.
As far as the hitting goes, I'm really not getting to either. And again, I promise you, I'm going to get to some hitting later. I promise, but just not yet.
Not yet. All right. So I think that, Detroit is another team that has like cheap options if you wanted to try to, get a cheap mini stack somewhere else. I don't know if I can do the Skubal. I'm just debating. I certainly have a hard time picking Skubal over Wheeler, but man, I'll tell you, he's got incredible strikeout stuff, and Texas is loaded, but they haven't been as good this year as we were expecting. And they don't have all of it, they're not entirely healthy, which they haven't been all year. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with this one because Texas does strike out against lefties. Like that's one thing that they'll do is they hit too, but they'll strike out. So I'm considering it. I have Skubal. If you can get to a Skubal Wheeler lineup, that's great. It just with the stacks I like, it's going to be hard for me to do. But I thought I would mention Detroit as another, in addition to Washington, as two mini stacks that I'm considering today. All right, you got Houston and St. Louis.
Yeah, so it's so funny that we're scaling into like the top plays here. So Houston, as far as hitting goes, we'll get that to Verlander in a second. But as far as hitting goes, they're just barely like below the top options, but just barely enough that I think I'm interested. I mean, Houston, they haven't put up like a 10 spot on the board in like a while, probably not since April. But I think this could be the spot to do it. I don't know. I think that Houston's perfectly reasonable here. You're gonna get a lot of chalk in other spots, but not that Houston's gonna be, I guess, low owned. But I definitely like the Houston side here against Gibson. Verlander, he's by projection one of the top four. We already talked about Wheeler. We talked about Gausman. I talked about Skubal. Had Gore just kind of off that, and then I have Verlander right in there. It's just not the guy that I like to play. I think I would just rather play Gausman than Verlander just because of the strikeouts and the upside. But St. Louis kind of stinks, so if he has a good game, I'm not particularly surprised. But I'd probably prioritize Wheeler. Definitely prioritize Wheeler over him. And although it is an extra $2,000, so I don't know. I think even at that price tag, I prefer Gausman, but Verlander is certainly in there. And I'll say this right now that SaberSim is definitely already waking up on the wrong side of the bed because my first set of runs with Sims and everything, I'm getting like 70% St. Louis. So I will leave that. I will leave that to you guys to sort out. But Verlander projects as one of the top four, and I have Houston again just on the outside looking in, but certainly playable.
Yeah, I have Verlander as a higher play, I think, than you do. I guess because of the matchup, I have Verlander ahead of Gausman, but I do think that's like an interesting. They're not quite the same price. Verlander's a little more expensive, but and I agree with you about Houston, by the way. I'm on board with playing some Houston, and also, if like they've got some, you should have Abreu in there who's super cheap in the lineup tonight. I mean, like I just think that they're affordable. It's not they haven't been this awesome lineup like you said, but I mean I'm not afraid of going after going after Kyle Gibson a little, and St. Louis's bullpen has been pretty bad, so. I'm totally okay with the Houston idea as a. It's just not what people are going to do today, and I think that's all the reason you need to do it. It's a good enough matchup. We haven't seen all of the major explosion lately, but yeah, I think I'm on board with the Houston idea. All right.
So now we get to the last three games here, and they put them on the same panel here on DraftKings, and I'll just say that like 5 of these 6 teams are like my 5 top stacks.
Those are your teams. Yeah.
You know, so we'll start with the most obvious being Cincinnati at Colorado. Cincinnati, rates very strongly as far as both value and raw points, and they're going to be the highest owned. So that's the usual issue. How chalky do you want to get? But they certainly look pretty good, and I actually have Colorado looking pretty decent also today. So listen, he's back and forth, I guess. I don't know. So I do like both offenses here. Certainly Colorado's going to be lower owned than Cincinnati, probably for good reason. But yeah, I mean, I like this game, both sets of bets.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with like not playing this game today, just because there's not a lot of other things to like fall in love with, I guess. But I definitely like the Cincinnati side. I actually like Abbott. I'll gamble on Abbott. I know you generally want a righty against Colorado, but I think that's like a play worth gambling on. I guess he and McGill are my 2 like sort of get weird plays today. But I don't mind the idea of getting to a little bit of Abbott, and that also would correlate well with the Cincinnati stack. So I kind of like that idea. And the interesting thing, Sheets, the early projections don't have this game being especially high owned, which I'm trying to figure out why, and I can't. So I don't know what it is. It's 84 degrees in Colorado, and even the total is only 10.5. It's not like a crazy total. Especially if this game doesn't get a crazy amount of ownership. I think that this is pretty much something you want to have a lot of exposure to. They've only got 4 of the Cincinnati players, or 3 in double-digit ownership and on goalies' early projections. That's pretty low. I mean, that's good enough for me. I'm okay with playing that type of ownership. So I'm good with Cincinnati. I don't like Colorado as much, but I'm totally open to if you wanted to get some exposure there as well. That makes plenty of sense. I'm a little surprised that the way the projections are working that's projected to be that low owned. I can't imagine that it actually ends up that low owned by the time it's time to play. All right, now we go again. We got another pitcher to talk about, and then another stack I know you're going to mention.
Yeah, I don't think there's. I mean, I'm not talking too much about the pitching here. I'm not really too interested in either of these guys. Well, yeah, okay. I have Waldron. He's, I guess, just below Gore as far as like second tier or so. But I mean, it's coming off the freaking. I don't know. He's coming off coming off a nut matchup, and I've been more respectful of the Angels than most people.
That's true. Yeah.
So I'm definitely gonna prioritize him. But listen, if I get to some Waldron, I'll get to him. But I wouldn't be so crazy about playing him. San Diego on the other side, as far as the hitting goes, I mean they're one of my top teams. Now again, Tyler Anderson, he's got tricks, right? He hasn't given up more than 1 run in like 6 starts, so not so easy to get to him. And I'll tell you this: like every time I play San Diego, it's like uber tilting. I mean, it just is.
Yeah.
But they're certainly rating pretty high, and when you're looking for ways to get off chalk, maybe San Diego is not as chalky as some of the others. So San Diego is one of the stacks I'm interested in. And I'll tell you this again, not as a priority, but if Waldron does start to get some steam here, I mean, I'll play my guys from the Angels. I'll play my Hope, who's my hero, and the Adele, and even Ward or whatever it is. So anyway. I would definitely play some Angels if, in fact, Waldron started to get a little bit of steam.
Yeah, I can't understand why he's not projected to be the highest owned pitcher. I can't understand why his strikeout projection is below 5. That's like literally it's like printing money. Like you could hike it up to 7, and I think that would be low. Like I think Waldron's for me, he's the top pitcher on the slate. I know it sounds weird. This is not one outing. He's been consistently very, very, very good, with the exception of 1 start in Arizona where he gave up like 700 runs. Other than that, against the Dodgers, in Atlanta, he was dominant. In Cincinnati, he was solid. His strikeouts, he's 7 innings, 8 strikeouts his last start. 5 innings, 7 strikeouts to start before. 5 innings, 10 strikeouts to start before. 5 innings, 6 strikeouts to the start before. why is he projected to have? Why is this K prop at 4.5 against an Angels team that fair enough, they're still the highest strikeout, second highest strikeout rate in baseball against right-handed pitching. No, third highest. I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, third highest. I am all over Waldron. He is to me be the most popular pitcher. The pricing is nice. It allows me to do what I want elsewhere. He's over the McGill and the Abbott, but I think you could play him with one of those guys to get super weird. I do think Waldron will end up being more popular than he's projected, but I've got him as the top pitcher on the slate, pricing considered. And I think that the strikeout prop is like the dumbest number it could ever be. I have no idea how it could be 4.5.
He by the way, he had 32 fantasy points in 85 pitches. That's tough to do.
No, I know, and I'm just saying, it's a price thing. It's 7,400 for me, and I still don't think he's got the longest leash or anything like that. But he's been very, very effective, and we've got him at 94 pitches. I mean, if he's going to throw 94 pitches against this Angels team, and he's really going to average out to 4.5 strikeout, give me a break. There's no way. I'll take the over on every strikeout.
Well, what you could do is we could try to look at the alt lines again.
Maybe get it up to 5.5 or 6.5.
6.5 or something like that.
You're
going to be very disappointed. They're going to give you 2 to 1 or something like that.
Yeah, that would be ridiculous. So, and unless it was 5 to 1 or something, I wouldn't want to do it, I don't think. But I do really like him. So I'm in on Waldron. I'm not really in on anything else from this game as of right now. It's looking like San Diego is going to have some ownership. Solano is a cheap option that I think is a reason why you could argue for making a mini stack or even a stack work. But that's pretty much the only piece that I wanted to mention because he's 2,800.
And then in the last game of the night, I don't know about the roof or the humidor or whatever else they got going on there, but I happen to have both these teams rated pretty decently. So I'm kind of into both of these hitting, both of these bats, both Arizona and San Francisco, and off of both pitchers.
Yeah, it's looking right now, I guess, that San Francisco would be the most popular team on the slate, which just feels weird. I guess it's a price thing because you've got Matos, Yastrzemski, Estrada, they're all under 4K. Bailey's 3,200, probably batting fifth. Trenton Brooks might be in there at 20,000. So they're the super cheap, obvious team would be San Francisco. And I don't mind it against Nelson. I just don't want to play it as the mega chalk. On the other side, Arizona against Howard. I think that I'm open to that. And they're going to be a little bit lower owned than the San Francisco side is. So the roof is closed. But there's going to be decent ownership here. And I think that it's a good value stacking game. But I would rather make my primary stack Philadelphia. I don't know it depends on where the ownership ends up with Cincinnati. So I have to double check that one later because I can't buy that they're not going to be really popular. But for me, it's going to be, this whole game along with the Colorado game and Philadelphia is where I'm going to do most of my picking. I also liked your idea about Houston. And then I mentioned the Detroit and Washington for value. My top 3 pitchers are Waldron, Wheeler, and Verlander at the moment. But I really think there's a lot of good options today. And those guys are all going to be fairly popular. So if you wanted to take a lower owned, McGill or Abbott as a weird play, I think that's totally viable. And you mentioned Mackenzie Gore. I think that's a reasonable play as well.
Yeah, so again, when I run my stuff right now, Cincinnati is showing up quite a bit, but then also St. Louis as that anti-Verlander play. I guess because they're cheap and maybe double pay for pitching and stuff like that. But we'll see where I come up with a little bit later on in the day. I do like Gausman. I think I'm turning on to Waldron. Well, this is an awesome lineup. So. This is a lineup that I just looked at one of my Saber sim builds here.
Uh-huh.
How about Ryan Nelson and Abbott together? You like that?
There you go. Yeah.
That's it.
The 0%ers.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, should be a fun one. We'll be live at 6 Eastern time. And Cheats, anything else?
No.
All right. I'm going to say good luck, everybody, and we'll see you.